Welcome to the Natural Genius podcast. We're here to help you tap into your natural genius. Let's go. Get ready to be inspired by amazing Anna, who is not only an impressive international leadership coach, she is a steward to land an organic farm and winery in Northern California called Campovida with her husband Gary, and they also have a couple of other venues and accommodation and restaurants in Hopland, which is their local town. So they've got a really lovely story about supporting their local community in many different ways through fundraising as well. She and Gary were the hosts for Do Lectures USA, which is how we met, and they ran that event for many years. She shares such sweet words and photos on Instagram about her life and her relationship with her girls, and she is just a very, very inspiring person. I hope you enjoy hearing a reunion of two friends that haven't spoken for a long time. Anna, welcome to the Natural Genius podcast. We're both thrilled to be together again.
I'm so excited to see you. You look wonderful. It's been too long, and I'm happy to be here.
It has been way too long. I wanted to start out with a thank you, Anna. Ever since we met, I've followed you on Instagram. You have been so vulnerable and so great at being able to share all different aspects of life, the laughter, the celebrations, the grieving, the, how do you say it, moments, the beautiful ways that you talk about your daughter and your dogs. You are such a beautiful example of taking life and making the most of it. And I dare say your relationship with Gary, your husband, is part of that. So I wanted to start with a thank you. My first question for you, tell me about before having your organic winery and land.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging my Instagram, because I actually do my Instagram as letters to my daughters, funny enough. And so I talk about everything because I just want a place in there, they're at that age where that's where sometimes they go for storytelling or sharing. And I'm like, well, I'll use this format for them. So thank you for acknowledging that, because they really are, they are my love letters to my children and sometimes to myself, just as a reminder. But before even, I met Gary, so I grew up, first of all, in Northern California, and I'm the youngest of 11 kids. And that's always important to note, because that's, I think, what got me into the world that I'm in, which is like the study of human behavior and leadership. And I'm just fascinated by what behaviors actually help people bring more joy, impact, and ease to their lives. I'm constantly in that inquiry.
Anna, tell me, were you like that as a kid? Were there aspects of you as a child that you would point to being curious about that? Because I think you and I are similar souls in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I was always the littlest one, right? I was the youngest of the 11, and everyone was bigger. So you naturally can't compete. So I don't really have much of a competitive bone in my body, so to speak. But I just would observe whether it be my older brothers or my older sisters, navigate getting things that they wanted or getting experiences that they wanted. And it was just so curious to me, and people had different strategies. And I was like, yeah, that's really fascinating. Right. And so I just studied it. And then I think I've always been more of like the sort of an observer around things. But then I also learned there's observing and being interested in others. But you also have to have this balance of being interesting, right? Because people will pass you by if you don't speak up or you don't have a point of view. And so I learned early on, I also had to have a point of view. Otherwise, I would just get passed over. So, it took a little longer for me to find that for myself naturally, I think, because I was so, oh my gosh. Can you imagine growing up with so many siblings in the same house? Bunk beds were like what I thought was a normal lifestyle, so Yeah, that definitely had a big impact on me. My grandmother was born in 1888. My mother was born in 1924. I was born in 1965, but I was being raised by like 1880 ethics, if that makes sense. My grandmother was the imprint on my mother. And then my mother, she immigrated to the United States from China through war. So she was a prisoner of war. I was raised by an immigrant mother and father. And yet all my brothers were like the hippies from the 60s. So I was raised by the 60s too, so I had this really interesting life of stories and everything from my father talking about World War II or the Great Depression and my mother talking about being in a prison camp. And yet then I had my brothers and sisters who were like, my one brother was like, secretly growing marijuana in the back neighbor's yard, you know what I mean? And so I saw it all and trying to make sense of it and still figure that stuff out too. Yeah.
Oh, Anna, you painted the most beautiful picture. You said that you had to be interesting and it took you a little while. Tell me more.
Yeah, I think that, for me, and, again, a Chinese mother, youngest daughter, young girl growing up in the 60s and 70s. Let's just put it this way. My mother used to say, and I loved and love my mother. She was doing always the best she could. And she also was the person who said, don't let anybody know you're so smart because you might not get married. Because that was her upbringing. Her upbringing was to be, sort of this.
Anna, if you weren't the smartest you are, you couldn't do as many things as you and Gary.
Right. I mean, but I was like temperate and, so it took a little while. And then, I worked for some really big companies. And I remember I had this job with a particular big global brand and I was covering Asia Pacific at the time. And it was I guess that would have been in the mid 90s. And I had some, good experiences up to then, but I was in Seoul, Korea, and I was going to be talking to them about their human resource strategies and systems. And I walked in and it was a room full of men. And one of them turned to me and said, "Are you here to bring the tea?" And so that's what I mean. It was this interesting time to find my voice, find my way, not turn into being, per se masculine in any way, but find my own way to articulate what I care about, what I knew could bring, again, I always live by joy, impact, ease, what I could bring joy to, what I could, have positive impact around, what could come with more ease rather than challenge and difficulty. So, along the way, but it took me a while. I was finding my way, and I remember the first time, again, my parents didn't do a lot of sleepovers because they couldn't reciprocate. Like, where are you going to put extra people in your house for a sleepover? But I remember being like away at college and I stayed this summer and I was alone.
That's a whole domino effect, really,
right?
Isn't it?
Right?
You have to leave to go to someone else's house so somebody else
have to
can
whole
come here.
rotate.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't going to work. So, but the first time I spent a night alone, I was 19, I'd never spent a night alone ever. And it was like, whoa, I don't have to eat anybody else's food. I don't have to listen to their music. I don't have to read their books. I can have choice here. And so that's sort of what I mean. Like I was kind of finding my way and, listen, I'm 60 now. And I always jokingly say, I'm still finding my way, I'm still trying to be interesting. Yeah. So
still trying to be interesting.
Interesting. My kids tell me all the time, right? So I had my kids late too. So that's the other thing I was trying to tell my kids because they keep saying, "Mom, that's not how they do it anymore. Mom, that's not how they do it anymore." And I'm like, oh my goodness, I am so outdated. And especially when they call your stuff vintage. "Mom, can I borrow your vintage bag? Can I borrow those vintage boots?" Like, I'm still alive. But to be relevant for what they're experiencing now, right? Like the opportunities and sometimes lack thereof, because things are changing so dramatically with technology. I'm trying to, make sense of it as they're trying to make sense of it too. So anyway,
staying relevant when you must be across so many different activities. So if we come into the here and now, so I remember you saying something like you relate the We Bought a Zoo aspect of Campovida and coming into being stewards of the land. And I remember when we came there for Do Lectures USA, and goodness, you just thought of all of the details, and it was just the most beautiful venue.
Well, one of the things that I do on an annual basis, and I actually lead workshops, I'm going to be leading one next week, is vision boards. And if you meet Gary, I always say he's a verb. He is highly productive, and he just doesn't stop. So for him, he doesn't want to be coached by his wife, and he doesn't want leadership, too much leadership consulting from me. But, as a wife and as someone who, started a family with him, he wouldn't sit down to do a vision board, but we would do these, I call them the vision board sessions, where we would be on a long car ride. And I would just ask him, what do you imagine 10 years from now? Because that's the way I do vision boards. It's 10 years from now. Because 10 years from now, anything's possible 10 years from now. Right? Yeah. So at the time, we were living in Oakland and very happy there. We had, a lot of friends. We loved our neighbors. We'd have these open houses with like almost old school block parties at our house. It was just lovely. My next door neighbor, he was 90 going on 40. He was just an incredible human. So we were very, very happy there. And then when we had kids, we were like, oh, is this where we want to raise the kids? And so I remember Gary and I literally having this like out loud vision board session, as I called it. And, 10 years from now, what could you imagine? And he said, I want a place where there's valley oaks, these big, ginormous, 300 to 500-year-old valley oaks. And he said, and, maybe no fences. And I said, wow, that's so incredible. I want a place where I can see the stars at night. And I grew up in what they call the South Bay of California, in Northern California, the South Bay. And when I grew up, it was all orchards and ranches and vineyards. And I said, I would love to be able to see ranches and vineyards from where we live. So those were the four, sort of dream points. See the stars, valley oaks, no fences, and some vineyard views. Nowhere in there did we say we wanted to operate a farm or, manage vineyards or, take care of a small town. None of it was that. So we kind of had this big picture dream. And so anyway, it started the conversation. And then I think once you start that kind of visioning, the universe just starts throwing stuff at you. And so Gary just happened to be up in this area, and someone said, oh, and he wasn't even up here for us. He was up here for a different reason. And he called me that night on his drive home, and he says, you won't believe this place that I found. And meanwhile, I was like, where are you? We had just had our second child, who was like 4 days old, and I still had a, under 3H. So I had a 3-year-old essentially and a 2-week-old, and he wasn't home because he was being a verb. And so, but that's the night he had discovered this beautiful place that
he was being a verb.
Yeah, he was being a verb. Anyway, so now flash forward, that was it was 18 years ago that he found it. It's been 16 years since we've been here. And, we call them dog years. So what is that? 103 years we've actually been here. Because every day when you report directly to Mother Nature, there is no plan. Yeah. You can make all your plans you want, but literally, so, and to bring you up to date right now, like the last few months, we've just been dealing with feral pigs, of all things, feral pigs.
Gosh.
which, there's a reason the term feral is in front of it. But but at the same time, I said to him actually 2 nights ago when we weren't sleeping, and I said, well, this is the price of an organic farm. It just is. Like, we don't have the fences. We don't have, we have abundance of biodiversity, and that comes with, running a biodynamic organic sort of space. And so you can't take some of that out as a result. It's part of the abundance, if you will.
Oh, Anna, so many questions. Tell me
about feral pigs.
Well, I do have a story about feral pigs.
Oh, tell me.
One time there's this amazing place in Australia called Lightning Ridge, and friends, I was travelling down sort of 2 states, and they said, oh, you must go along Lightning Ridge. It's beautiful. And for some reason, I think I thought that there was going to be more population around there, and so I was running low on petrol. And I was kind of focusing in my car of like, oh, where am I going to get to? And it's getting pretty low in the tank. And then suddenly, and I'm on this ridge, Lightning Ridge, and I'm going at, not great with miles per hour, but 60 kilometres an hour. And then suddenly this massive wild pig starts running along the side of the car. And I immediately am thinking, it's just any moment now, being so close to the car, it's going to just go into my car. And it bolted along beside me for what felt like a long, long time.
Yeah.
And then eventually just ducked back into the bush. It was just the most strange.
They can be dangerous.
Stories.
They can be very dangerous. I will say it's one of the best things we've ever done in our lives to do this thing that, it's Campovida, but we've also taken now, since I think we've seen you, I don't know, I don't think we had taken on the second hotel, but we have the 2 hotels in downtown Hopland now. And when I say downtown, I just want to be clear, downtown is an old pioneer town of, from the 1880s as well. And, it's all of like 2 blocks and 800 people. So, we have 2 hotels. And then Gary, during the COVID years, built a facility, what they call custom crush. So they basically can help grape growers crush their grapes, but keep it local and in county. So he built a big facility to help with that as well. So yeah, he's a verb. I'm telling you, he's been busy, and I just try to keep up with him, and I help manage. We always say he does the outside job, I do the inside job. So I'm focused on the people and the customer experience, and he's focused on the land and the property management and things like that. So yeah. And by the way, when our eyes locked as next door neighbors, which is what happened when we met, we were next door neighbors. We had not ever met. He had lived there 7 years. I had lived there 1 year. I had just ended our relationship I was in ended, and I was mourning still. I was still grieving, and I wasn't interested. And so I really wasn't looking. And then I walked out, and there he was. And I promise you, when we looked at each other, it was not, oh, I can't wait to go into business with you. Because that, I think about that all the time. I'm like, would that have been the thing that I would have thought that we would have been doing? But no. But, here we are, and we laugh a lot, and we worry a lot together. I even think the worry brings you close sometimes, It's a very intimate experience to be worried together, Yeah. But at the same time, it's really wonderful to laugh and not take yourself too seriously or life too seriously together too. So we've been through it, man. It's double click on.
Of course you have. And tell me, being able to hold each other's dreams as well sounds like a part of your relationship, dare I ask?
Yeah, one of the things, we met later in life, so we were both pretty independent by the time we met. We weren't trying to morph to each other. We were kind of, I think that's what works for us. We're super independent. And so it's been always really easy to look at each other's dreams and say, what's that going on for you? Even he just said this to me yesterday. I told him about some positive phone call that I had or something. And he's like, good for you. You keep doing that. Keep doing you. And it was just so sweet because, he could have just pass by it, you know, but he is, yeah, he's always, I was telling my girls, first of all, I believe dating is research to find out, you know, what brings you alive, who brings you alive. And so you should think of it as research. You're not out to prove anything. You just like go out and do some research. And so I tell my girls all the time, I'm like, find someone who brings you alive. So find someone who just believes in you some days more than you believe in yourself. You know, don't find someone who wants to make you feel small or competitive or that you have to prove yourself. I'm like, there's so much of that in the world. Like, find someone who's just your natural cheerleader and right.
I love that. Yeah. And I've had different friends that they're, after many years, like with you and Gary, they're still giggling in the night together. And I as a friend hearing that, it is such, it's just so beautiful to hear.
Yeah. And, you know, and listen, another friend of mine called one day. She and her husband had gone into business together, and they were like a year into their marriage, and COVID had hit, and she just was like, what have we done? Right. And she called, she's like, how do you and Gary do it? And I'm like, oh, honey, we do it a day at a time. Like, if I look too far down the road, like, I get overwhelmed. So you just put on the boots one day at a time. And I still believe that. You just have to do it one day at a time. You're just like, because that's all we have. It's like just this moment, right? Like, and of course you have to look up and see where are we pointing our boots towards, and, you know, what's ahead, but like really trying to just be right here, right now, you know? So yeah.
I love that Boots gets into that visioning, Anna. And tell me that lovely movie or documentary, Little Big Farm or Big Little Farm or something like that. Is it like that? Is that what you've experienced in terms of, in that movie they described the year on year, as you say, wild pigs this year or this moment? They sort of talked about the different challenges with respect to either weather or certain species that
it's all of it. Yeah.
The opening.
Yeah, I think there's that movie, I always say they were definitely, those farmers were marketers behind the scenes because they knew how to capture the storytelling in a really good way. You know, Gary and I, you know, I'm the people person. Like, that's what my client work is around, people, and Gary was property. So we don't have a marketing bone in us, but I will tell you, they captured the stories of the farmer really trying to find the balance. And I think whenever we do anything, I mean, isn't this life? Like, you know, for every action or inaction, there's a possible response, right? So you remember Ken Beck, I called him the voice of nature. He was the one who taught me that if you have aphids, just bring the ladybugs, like bring more ladybugs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all you need is ladybugs. Or, you know, that the coyote actually keep the deer away because you don't want the deer coming into your garden and eating your garden. So, you know, everything has this balance. And yeah, I mean, you know, we literally have every possible Mother Nature challenge, whether it be flood or freeze or fire we've had. You know, we've had every aspect here where we've had to, you know, literally, I always say it's either Mother Nature or human nature that I'm on my knees. I mean, like you feel like on your knees, like, oh my God, that just happened. And then you see, like, we had this ginormous tree fall in our front yard, and I watched it, and it was so breathtaking. And it was as if if you've ever been next to someone who's taken their last breath, there's something so remarkable about it. And I watched this probably 500-year-old tree fall in front of me, and boom, it landed. And then shortly thereafter, like literally within seconds, all the wildlife was leaving. There was a fox den under that tree that I never knew. And I saw all these fox run out. I had no idea. There was a fox den underneath it.
Whoa.
There were birds like flying still sideways in to like either, I don't know, to gather the things that they had remaining. I mean, and then all the other birds on all the other trees were like harmonizing and like talking about it. It was remarkable. And I thought, yeah, life has to go on. Like we have to kind of, these things happen and we have to kind of pivot and move on. Right. So
I was on a walk yesterday, Anna, and I looked up and there was this beautiful tree that I was admiring. And then I saw these two, like, kind of, it felt a bit strange to see these two red blobs up in the canopy. And I was like, what is that? And then I saw they were parrots. And that was their homes. Like there were these gorgeous little holes that I could see them like checking me out and then like popping back into their little homes. And it was way up. And it was just
so remarkable, right?
Amazing. And you remind me of friends after bushfires here in Australia that had floored everything other than one building on their property. And they told of the next day where it was just black, black, black. And then over the next few days that it was silver in the morning. All the spiders came out and the beauty that was the sort of dew on the spider webs and how incredible the landscape was. And I mean, we can talk about that being a kind of conversation of resilience. And also it's like nature's art, so beautiful things that you might not have known, like a fox den thing.
Yeah. I mean, nature is definitely a great teacher for how we all work together and find resilience, in ourselves and in the landscape. And how do we find hope? I mean, you tell me about the spider and I just immediately, like the spider web, I'm like, I feel such a sense of hope, a rebuilding, a weaving back together, it's just remarkable, right? It kind of gives you that sense of hope, like, oh, I can do that then. I can do that, so.
You just gave me goosebumps. I love that. You mentioned balance before. I have to mention there's a beautiful term in one of the Indigenous cultures here in Australia, napaji, and it's that everywhere you go, you can expect balance. And if you notice that something is out of balance, it's your responsibility to put it back into balance. So many of the Indigenous stories I hear, they're just simple little fables. Tell me, how does a steward of the land and all of the many other roles that you've got at the moment, how do you think that's changed your coaching style or how you be with people when you're by their side as a life gardener, which I just love?
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking, but
I can't.
That was so funny because one just walked in like as if he owned the place. Okay, so let me just say,
I did actually spot him, and I thought, oh,
you do? Oh my gosh!
I do love it when the dogs come in, especially when owners are patting them when we're recording, because I just think it's lovely to involve them.
Yeah, he's my Augie. He's a Pyrenees lab mix, which in itself makes him really confused. He's like, should I be outside or should I be on your lap? Should I be at your feet or out in the fields? Like he's super confused. And so
you just got to be compassionate.
Yeah, I love him.
Give him extra love.
I think it's a really great coach. And, it's funny. I have this corporate group coming to stay at the farm next week, and they're based out of New York. And, I go to New York and I work with them and their leadership space, which is, in Manhattan, and it's so vibrant and so alive. And there's like, for me, when I go to New York, it's literally the city that doesn't sleep, but it's also like, I don't have enough trees there is what I would tell you. Like, yes, there's the park and everything, but like, I have so come accustomed to waking up with the birds, literally, right? But I think what's really helped shape my work, and I think kept me in the conversations around leadership, is really just slowing down so much. Such a level of presence that when you live in a place like this, that's all you can do. And people ask all the time, how do you do all this? And I'm like, well, I don't really have New York. I have trees. There's a lot less distractions in a way. And so I I literally wake with the sun rising early in the morning, and we have very, very full days of walking the land, or, and then usually I'm like doing a phone call, but then I'm walking out to the garden or into the fields, or, meeting with people about said barn or whatever it is. And so, there's something about being so close to the soil that I think it's rooted me to see more clearly, quite frankly, because I don't get caught up in all the other distractions and the noise. So I think you'd have to ask some of my clients what the experience is for them. But sometimes I think what I hear back.
By the way, I did enjoy seeing the testimonials on LinkedIn. Goodness gracious, such beautiful words.
Oh, that's nice to say. Thank you. I love my clients. I mean, I'm at a place in my career too, where like when I meet someone and there's like that mutuality, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't we want to work together? This will be great fun. But I will tell you that I think there's a clarity as a result. Like sometimes when my client will call me and they're kind of caught in the swirl of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, I've been pretty much standing here most of today, and I can just hear it, and I can hear how they're relating to something. And I think as a result, I am that back to the observer. Yes. And I'm observing. That's not getting you anywhere if you keep doing that same thing over, right? So what about an alternative view? What if you looked at it this way? Kind of like examining a tree, like the healthy parts, the parts that might need to be trimmed back or something. So, or roots that needs to be sort of tended to. I tell people all the time, in my life gardening title, which is self-made up, it's like I get to pick a title. I'm going to call myself a life gardener, that we all have our own compost, but we don't tend to talk about our compost. And compost, if you turn it, is where the heat is. It's where the rich learnings and lessons and, stinky stuff is. And we got to mix it up and, grow from it. And so that's really what I love doing is whether it's an individual or a team or an organization, I'm like, let's talk about that compost, because in there is some rich conversations of learning and growth and opportunity. And so I think that's how it shaped me. It's definitely, I've run businesses for other entities before, but the other thing, I think running businesses where we run the P&L and a lot of years aren't profitable. I mean, most years aren't profitable, but you're doing good work. It's very humbling. And so I think being also a leader here with a team that looks to me for, wisdom or downright resources or support, like I feel that, and that helps me then understand another leader's plight, of trying to be a strong leader or manage a business or find profit or what have you. So I think that's definitely the impact that it's had on me.
Yeah, wow. And so sometimes those spontaneous calls from clients would come through and you'll be out in the field or you'll be somewhere on the land.
Yeah.
And stop and be able to take that call.
Yeah.
What amazing results for them.
One of my clients, back when, COVID was really taking off and everybody was doing Zoom calls and everybody was already tired of Zoom calls and Zoom or Google or, whatever the mode was. And one of my clients, we used to meet in person. And so she and I were on the Zoom call and I said, how are you? She goes, to be honest, I just don't want to see myself anymore. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. We're not used to sitting for hours in a day looking at our own image, right? We just don't do that. And so we started to practice instead. I was her break, where instead of sitting, we would take a walk and we would walk and talk. And then it was so successful that's what I do with a lot of clients, actually. Yeah. They get out, even if they're in New York. I'm like, get out of the office, go walk down the street with me. Let's talk and walk. And we cover a lot of territory, but I get them back in their bodies as well. So we do that a lot too, which is a real benefit. So yeah, I'll be out and they're like, I can hear the birds. And I'm like, I know. And so, yeah, so I'm really grateful because back to the vision board and the conversations, one of the dreams I had was to bring teams and clients to this place, because it is as you know, it's a very special place. It's, it's unceded territory of the Pomo Chanel Valley Indians, and it traced back for centuries, and it was their tribal land, and you can feel it when you're here. There's such a there's such a specialness and energy to this land that we're just trying to steward it thoughtfully and carefully while we're on it. But when people are here, I see them slow down. And when I say slow down, it's like coming home back to themselves. And like to return home and then like home.
Anna, there was a couple of things that I must pass on that happened at Do Lectures Australia, which I was mentioning before, that you were part of the inspiration, all of you at Do USA. And one was compost, which is lovely that you mentioned that before. So the amazing venue owners like yourselves at Payne's Hut, the rubbish or the garbage that came from 120 plus people over 3 days. Well, actually the bump in, like the beforehand, was almost like an event itself, and then the event, and then afterwards the garbage was half a trailer load. Like, it was such a small amount, and the rest of it was compost. They were excited about the compost. They were excited that Do Australia would be in their compost. I loved that there was a real pride around the lack of waste for so many people to have been on the land. And back to what you were saying before about listening, for this podcast, one of the inspirations is Rick Rubin. I've loved his podcast. He's just so good at being able to listen and throw in useful questions. And I do love that. I wonder if that's what we do as coaches, Anna, that presence that you talk of must be so good to make decisions on a barn or on a maintenance thing or a client call. It's presence and being able to cultivate that for yourself and others. What a gift. And when you think back to your career and the work that you've done specifically in leadership development and working with teams, can you feel the ripple effects? Have you had many moments of clients coming back to you saying, hey, that really made a big difference and these are the reasons why?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty, listen, even as you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had such incredible, gifted clients. And I think the central theme of those incredible, gifted clients is they were both interested and interesting. They were really open-hearted, right? To learn. They make the best clients when they're open-hearted to learn, right? If everybody came and they're like, oh, I've just got to show you how much I know or how much I think that there's a lot of ego out there. And when I meet clients who are really setting their ego down and wanting to bring more of themselves in a way that is generous to themselves, but also to others, right? Who doesn't want to help with that, right? And so I will say, yeah, I've watched a lot of individuals grow and succeed and continue to succeed. And I feel very grateful. I have a lot of clients who I've had for a long time, and that's not out of like me clinging. It's just more out of us growing together. It's almost, have you heard that like trees that grow together and they sort of have a root system that helps them sturdy up? I think that's, now that I think about it, like I have this one client, it started out, we were supposed to work 6 months together, and I think we're at 8 years, and I have another client 25 years, but she's gone in and out of different, she hasn't hired me the whole time, but we've worked together over the 25-year span. Another one is 20 years. And I've just engaged with someone else who I met 15 years ago. So, I think the central theme though is you get to that edge. Sometimes we all get to an edge, and it's like that. I tell my kids all the time, if you're uncomfortable, you're learning. And so like, if you're at that edge, it's like, but if you're uncomfortable and you're also felt held back or a little nervous, a firm hand on your back is always helpful.
Oh yeah, the warm hand on your, absolutely.
Yeah. So I try to be that firm hand, but also one in the other, like the hand that you're just holding too. So I try to be a firm hand, and I've got you too. I'm holding you. Yeah. So might be a little push, and gentle enough, but definitely one with the interest of helping folks grow. So yeah, I have seen them grow. I was thinking about it though, they do the work, they're the ones doing the work. I can't claim anything, because if they didn't do the work, you know what I mean? Like I can't claim anything. I feel like an observer again. I feel like a helpful observer, whispering, in their ear.
A helpful observer.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to Rick Rubin again. I love that he asks fascinated and fascinating questions.
Mm-hmm.
And as coaches, to be able to have that presence, Anna, and then to be able to ask questions. Time is precious in a way. It might be an hour here or a moment there. And I mean, more recently for me, I've wondered where those questions come from. When I've done strategy work or when I've done coaching work, I'm like, where do those questions come from?
Right.
I used to be able to do it like relatively young. I could ask some pretty on the money business questions, and that's where sort of hand in hand with spirit these days. I feel like that's what my listening and coaching work is about.
It's so interesting. I feel like some of the questions are from source, whatever we want to call source. They just kind of come down in through you, through us, reveal at the right time, the appropriate response, of what's needed in that moment. I did this practice with a teacher, a writing teacher, and she's excellent. Her name is Jules Swales out of the UK, and she teaches method writing. I don't know if you've ever done method writing. It's similar like method acting, but essentially it's to strip everything away. Just literally strip everything away and then write from that core place. And that practice alone really shaped and shifted how I started to see even the trees outside, let alone the people I was working with. And I've been, I went through coaching programs and lots of training and development and everything, but boy, writing with full presence.
Writing with full presence is what works.
It really, it just deepened the seeing of myself first and foremost in a way that she does this practice. I don't want to give away all her trade secrets or her teaching, but it basically to locate yourself first. Start with locating yourself, and I've learned this methodology through coaching, or even meditation or some Buddhist practices. But there was something about all of a sudden writing it, that it was like not in my head or just in my body. It was so integrated. It was my thinking mind, my feeling mind, and then my active body of writing that it really sort of created this, oh, okay, full presence right now. And so that practice alone is really taken, I think, the conversations that I've been having with clients even further. And I don't teach method writing to them, but I show up in a way that's
embodying that.
That location. Like if I can locate myself, then maybe I can help them locate themselves.
How
So
cool is that?
Totally random thought, and maybe you want to cut this part out. I don't know, but I just saw the Odyssey last night.
Right. I've
Have
not
you
seen it yet.
have
No,
you heard about
I
it
have.
though?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
3-hour Greek mythology, Matt Damon, just journeying, you know, and the story is all about trying to get home, right? And of course, there's the home with his Penelope, and the castle and everything. But really, it's his internal sort of conversations that he's having, even though it's like this epic IMAX theater thing. But in a way, aren't we all IMAX theaters if you turn the lens, right? It's that's what's so fascinating about the film. So anyway, that you
Literally the hero's journey. And
realize
tell me, I mean, Anna, you and I could talk about so many different things for such a long time. I want to know about this piece for you around being interested in others and an observer from a really young age. When you were talking about that at the start of our conversation, it reminded me of Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours. Like, you've been an observer for such a long time. And dear friends of mine that have done different careers that they started when they were teenagers, whether they're programmers or whether they're filmmakers that have had a camera in their hands since they were really young. Those 10,000 hours rack up quickly if it's under 20 years old. So I wonder if you got much of a chance to bring in or curate speakers for Do USA, and whether you miss some of that, because what I found through that experience in Australia was I would meet people and it'd be like, oh, great, I've got a retainer, if you like, for their brilliance to have a light shined on them. And again, that probably it's part of why I've started this podcast. But one of the really lovely things about Do, and huge kudos to Claire and David Hyatt as the co-founders, is that we can shine the light on those interesting people that we come across.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was thinking about our conversation today. Those were incredible years. I can't even believe we were able to do it. I mean, like, listen, I was a lot younger, but you know, we were running a farm and not a profitable one, and times were stressful. And I had 2 little ones. Like, essentially I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old by the time we got our first due off. And I look back and wow, that was crazy making like what, and meanwhile I was self-employed, you know, besides running the farm, I was a self-employed consultant. And so that is not for the faint of heart. And then Gary really was just back to him being such a supporter. He didn't get involved much other than when it came down to the week of or the week after, really helping the crew and our team getting the place ready and everything. And I'd run by, ideas and things, but he would pretty much let me try this thing because he knew I had such a love for this, back to this, really curious about leadership and the people. And I feel so grateful to have had, to your point, like Claire and David's vision of the Do, sort of a structure and a concept and a framework of an invitation that people responded to, right? Because it had such good intention underneath, and still does have such good intention underneath all of it. So I feel really, because I think it would have been different if I just said, hey, my name's Anna and I live in Hopland. Would you come talk to me about leadership? I don't know, if that would have, it was a very incredible sort of
undertaking.
There's that. It felt like that's why I was like thinking about it. I was like, it was such a birth every year, and I have no children from it. But all that said, I have a lot of great fond memories that I pull from it. And I also have made some incredible friendships and relationships. In fact, I don't know if you remember Matt Helt. Did you ever meet Matt Helt?
Yes.
He just came through a couple of weeks ago with his wife. And, you mentioned our dog Buster. And when Buster passed away, I sent him Buster's leash, which just had me back on my knees. And Matt would make these leather gifts. He made a bracelet for me that I wear all the time, and he made keychains. He made the kids bracelet out of Buster's leash. Anyway, so you have these incredible humans in your life from that experience that I hope to have for a lifetime. Absolutely, I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, and in terms of leadership, I was thinking about not that question, but I think what is remarkable when I think about the leaders that came across or walked into that barn and on, behind that big log, with such a diverse range of humans. Some very already well known, as you know, and some who were just getting started with an idea and everything in between. And all of them, to me, I think that's the thing about being, I think, with Mother Nature too. It's all equalizing, though, right? We're all the same in so many ways, if we can remember that. And so that I do miss that size of gathering with that kind of purpose. I do think it's there's not enough of those offerings out in the world, just to shine the light on people with a great idea making a positive impact. I think that's wonderful that you're doing this podcast. And I also would say my life is filled with those without a big stage and without I was with my team yesterday, and I have 3 leaders that are growing and developing, and listening to them tackle a tough conversation and shed positivity on someone else's life in this little tiny community is as rewarding, quite frankly, and I mean this sincerely, as having a famous person in our barn. It just
well said. Yeah, well, it wasn't necessarily the fame for me. It was the humility. Being with people for 3 days over a 3-day dinner party, I think that the humility is key.
We ran the do a number of years, and I'm leaving names out, but there was a few individuals who came with a lot of ego, and it was really like, oh, that's a standout. Gave a great talk, put on the show, but missed the point. Missed the point. And that's part of humanity too, right?
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, that's part of humanity too. But it's like, yeah. So I now my passion work of leadership development, I do get the opportunity, and I get invited into those conversations, which is unbelievable, right? But then the day-to-day living in a little rural town, or the visitation I get here, there's just remarkable leaders everywhere.
I agree.
Always. You just have to pay attention. That's the part.
Presence.
Yeah, back to presence. Yeah. So,
Anna, thank you so much for sharing your life and some tips and tricks. And sometimes I think conversations like these, just to be able to spread the sweetness in lots of different topics that we've covered, is important.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, we just had our own little talk, that could be hopefully shared and make joy, impact, and ease someone somewhere, someplace. I know for me, thank you for the conversation. I think when you even sent the invitation, I was like, what do I have to say? Like, do I have anything to say? And then you get talking and you realize, oh yeah, they're doing a lot. There's a lot going on, and it's good to take stock. It's good to remember, what am I doing? So I think the process of interviews, the process of a sit-down conversation that isn't practiced or rehearsed, just also is a locating of ourselves, like I mentioned, a reminder of what we're up to, and the good people around us who want to do it too. So Thank you, Sam. I just love seeing you, and loved getting the email, because I was like, oh,
I haven't quite worked out, I've said this a few times, I haven't quite worked out how I continue to catch up with people, but like you, Anna, there's been others that I haven't caught up with for years and years and years, but you are treasures in my heart. And it just feels like it's such a lovely, I mean, that's part of the reason why I hit record as soon as possible, because that aliveness of us catching up for the first time in a while is so, so sweet. And thank you so much for bringing in locating as well. I just loved that, being able to help people locate themselves and bring them back into themselves. There's a lot these days on grounding and presence, and you've just put a really beautiful way of being able to say that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so great to see you. So great.
Thanks for listening to the Natural Genius podcast. Please share this with anyone who came to mind and visit us at naturalgenius.com.au. Thanks so much.